Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of To Be Read or Not to Be Read. In today's video, I'll be reading The Sleep Experiment by Jermey Bates. In 1954, at the start of the Cold War, the Soviet military offered four political prisoners their freedom if they participated in an experiment requiring them to remain awake for 14 days while under the influence of a powerful stimulant gas. The prisoners ultimately reverted to murder, self-mutilation, and madness. None survived. In 2018, Dr. Roy Wallace, an esteemed psychology professor at UC Berkeley, is attempting to recreate the same experiment during the summer break in a soon-to-be demolished building on campus. He and two student assistants share an 8-hour rotational schedule to observe their young Australian test subjects around the clock. What begins innocently enough, however, morphs into a nightmare beyond description that no one could ever imagine, with perhaps the exception of Dr. Wallace himself. So guys, I am about 50 pages in and nothing crazy has happened yet. I stopped at day 3. So far the test subjects, Chad and Sharon, are adjusting to their environment, which is a chamber, and are sometimes exposed to a gas to keep them awake. The professor believes that sleep is merely a habit that is not necessary and is conducting this experiment to prove it. Right now it's setting the stage for what I hope will be an unforgettable story about the importance of sleep. I just finished up day 6 and things have started to become more heated. So far, these subjects are becoming angrier and they're having more disagreements. Sharon, who is a reader like me, is actually starting to read less, which is a stark difference. When she started the experiment, she was excited to read so many books, but now she can barely read for 10 minutes. Chad is becoming a bit more aggressive. Other than that, I'm kind of liking it. I'm only 100 pages in, so hopefully it gets better tomorrow. Guys, things have gotten entirely out of control. As I left off, Chad and Sharon were starting to feel unwell. Chad began to imitate what he was watching on TV, so he started acting like Eddie Murphy. So Sharon was also losing it too. She was sick and was very, very irritable and heard voices in her head. When I made it to day 12, that's when things got really scary. To sum it up, Dr. Willis invites a love interest to see the experiment and he thinks everything is normal, but they have basically gone insane by the way they're acting. This part was so scary. Everyone has gone insane, even Dr. Willis. Where I started, Sharon was in the bathroom for 2 hours. When they went into the bathroom, it was honestly disgusting. I will spare you the great details of it. Chad's case was worse because he essentially lost many aspects of himself. Overall, this part of the book is definitely something I will never forget. I just stopped at a cliffhanger, so these last 30 pages I have left are going to be so interesting. I have now reached the end. My mind is blown. First off, Chad was no longer Chad. He did things that a human wouldn't do, and based on the early knowledge in the book, everything that he did in the end was out of his character. In the epilogue, Dr. Willis goes on trial for what happened. On the last page, justice was served. Although it may have not been legally served, overall, this was a solid horror book. Next up is the rating section. Welcome to the rating section of the episode. In one of the upcoming episodes, one book will receive 6 scores, which means it was a perfect story that I'll never forget. First is readability, which is based on how easy and enjoyable the book was for me to read. I would give this book a 3 because it wasn't too enjoyable, but it was a bit easy to digest. Jermey Bates did a good job at writing a horror novel, but I think he spent too much time on these side plots. I just think if he had put more time into the actual sleep experiment, it could have been better. The next category is characters, which is based on character development and how well the characters came to life throughout the book. I will give this character category 4 stars. Professor Willis had the most character development. He started as a nice, down-to-earth professor, but as the story progressed, he lost a few screws, and I would not want to be his student. Chad and Sharon changed mostly too, and I think the author's portrayal of them changing into something totally different throughout the experiment was perfect because it added layers to how losing sleep affected them to the point where they weren't even their original self anymore. The category for plot will be based on its clear beginning, middle, and end, level of engagement, and the originality. I would give this a 2 out of 5 stars. Although it was fast paced at the end, it was challenging to get through. It did have a clear start, middle, and end. Creating a horror version of a real life event is highly original. I wish the book had focused on that aspect longer. Last but not least is the ending. This is based on how satisfying it was. I will give it a 5 out of 5. The build up was so good and it was fast paced. The ending saved the book. It was the perfect climax. Based on the ratings from the categories, I will give this book 2 out of 5 scrolls, and it's not worth reading. If you enjoy horror and gory content, then you will enjoy this book. If the side plots took up less time, I would recommend it more. However, if there's one thing I have learned from this book, it's that I will always ensure I get in my 8 to 9 hours of sleep. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe. Next week's book will be Escape Ruined by Marine Staples. Until next time, explore new worlds and new stories.